Good morning, Will. This is Pokey Harris, just doing an audio check to see if you all are there.
I heard you, Pokey. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can. So I think we may be waiting on them. Just want to make sure our technology is in place, and that we're not the ones that will be holding anything up on our end if it's not.
And we even made it on Zoom.
Thanks.
Yes, we did with no with no issues of our transitioning from
We
Teams
got a
like
couple committee members, I think, running just a few minutes behind, so we're going to give them a few minutes. But I do want to try to start on time as quickly as possible. It is a little bit different because I said last time with a subcommittee, we usually have a bill in front of us, and we don't. So, but we do have some folks from North Carolina that's here online with us that's going to be giving us some testimony, especially about NextGen 911, especially what they did with Hurricane Helene. So, to save their time, I'm going to give these committee members a few more minutes, and then we may go ahead and start this thing, let them start testifying. When they walk in, they walk in. So just give us a few minutes and we'll get this thing going shortly.
that will be fine. That will give us the opportunity to get a fresh cup of coffee.
Okay, we got 3 of us here right now. There we go. Senator Roberts will be walking in. I'm Senator Bearden, chairing this subcommittee. To my right, Chairman John Albers, Senator Wicks to my left. Before we get started, I'm going to ask Chairman Alberts if he starts off in prayer.
It'd be my pleasure. Please bow your heads. Lord, thank you for this time in the gathering today. Lord, we're here to talk about important issues, and we're going to ask that you bless all those who will speak to us. Let us learn how we can better serve our fellow Georgians and support all of our first responders, and especially all those who work in our 911 dispatch centers. We ask to put a hedge of protection around them and their families, be with them as they handle stressful duties and do things that save people's lives. For it's in Jesus' most holy name we make our prayer. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chairman. We're going to start this morning off. Got a chance to listen to the House Study Committee, and Pokey Harris, the Executive Director of North Carolina 911, got to listen to her testimony to them. It was very moving, to say the least. And I asked her if she would at least do a Zoom call with us this morning to give us, based on what she told the House House Study Committee, because there was a couple of things that really caught my attention in her testimony. So we're going to start this off with Pokey Harris from North Carolina. I think you got some members of your team with you. So if you'll introduce them, we will turn this over to you and let you go ahead and get started with this meeting.
So, good morning. I am Pokey Harris, the Executive Director for the North Carolina 911 Board, and currently serving as the President for the National Association of State 911 Administrators. Thank you for having us today, and this was probably going to be a repeat of what he referenced hearing, but on December the 4th, Tom Rogers, who is with me today, Tom is the NG911 network engineer and program manager. He and I presented to the House Study Committee for Disaster Mitigation and Resiliency. Then on September 29th, along with me was Kristen Falco, who serves as our Education and Training Coordinator, as well as former 911 Regional Coordinator and former Financial Review Specialist, and Stephanie Connor, who is currently the Western Region 911 Regional Coordinator and backup to our Grants Administrator. We spoke to the House Study Committee on funding for NG 911. And today I'm pleased to have all three of these folks with me who are members of my staff. I will say that when Stephanie and Kristen and I came down, we did make a road trip down, and then coming home, we got to enjoy a roadside picnic, Stuckey's, and a few of those things. So I just want to say that I do believe Georgia has become my adopted state, working with Alicia and Greg on the wonderful work that they're doing in the NG 911 space, trying to move the needle on this there for you all. What a wonderful group of individuals that I've worked with, and not only have they become colleagues, but they've become friends. And I do want to say that I got to spend just a little time in Chickamauga last weekend. My nephew was married there, so got to experience beautiful northern Georgia. And I have to say, I had a little bit of pride in my heart knowing that I was helping the folks in the communities I was driving through, and that they were going to get to experience NG 911 in the very near future. So we are humbled to be here today with you all. Speaking of the neighborhoods, I will say that as a neighboring state, there are 4 counties in Georgia. I want to make sure I reference these correctly: Fannin, Union, Towns, and Raven, and 3 counties in North Carolina, Cherokee, Clay, and Macon, that we share approximately 85 miles of border. We want to ensure that we're able to seamlessly transfer 911 calls with all of the accurate location information to you and from you. Is there anyone doing the slide presentation for us? I do not see that. So do I need to ask someone to guide? Do I need to share my screen?
You can share your screen.
Well, let me just see if I can do this on
Okay.
Zoom. Tom, how about let me call on you, sir, and can you drive for us? Can you share your screen?
I was just told if you can't, we can.
So I think we've got it. Hang on just a
Okay.
moment.
One
Tom,
moment.
can you acknowledge?
Yes, ma'am. One moment. Let me try to pull this
Okay.
up. I am, like yourself, not accustomed to,
To Zoom.
yeah.
Tom, hang on just a moment. I may have it, sir.
Okay.
Stand by. Can you all see that?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a little sheet, but I know we didn't announce it. so
Yeah.
Give people more time to put it on.
It says I'm sharing. Can you all see that?
We got it.
Yes.
Yep. Got it.
Okay. So now I can't see what slide I'm on, so I'm going to navigate just a little bit in the dark. Hang on just a moment. Let me put it where I need it. So you all should be seeing, there we go, we got it, yay. So see, we're not technically challenged after all. Listen folks, we run the best NG911 system in the country, but we cannot navigate Zoom. So bear with us, please. So today we do want to talk with you all about 4 focus areas. That's the funding of NG911, deployment of NG911, the benefits of NG911. And we also want to speak to you all just a little bit about how North Carolina does use the 911 service fee. And before I go any further, I do want to share with you all a quote from Pablo Picasso that has really become our mantra in North Carolina. I credit Chris and Falco for this as we begin speaking about our NG911 deployment, but this suits and fits us so well. And it states that our goals can only be reached through a vehicle of a plan in which we must fervently believe and upon which we must vigorously act. There is no other route to success. And with that, our vehicle in North Carolina is our North Carolina 911 Board and the legislation that has established the North Carolina 911 Board. It is a 17-member policy-making board with membership appointed by the governor, the House, and the Senate assigned. Our North Carolina general statute that governs the 911 board, I will not read this specifically to you. I give you to this as reference, 143B, 1400 to 1406, and it specifically speaks about the board, responsibilities and duties of the board, the 911 fund, the migration of all the PSAPs to a statewide EasyNet, the 24-hour knock that we do have in legislation that was established. And then we even talk about the telecommunicator required training for that initial 40 hours and emergency medical dispatch. Here, I want to speak with you specifically about the establishment of a special reserve fund back in 2016, established by House Bill 730, that required the minimum of 15% be set aside for 911 of the 911 service charge for the implementation of Next Generation 911. Then moving forward in 2017, we did establish our first managed service contract with AT&T for the NG911 core services, as well as the hosted call handling equipment. That hosted call handling equipment is specialized 911 equipment for answering 911 calls. This made it a direct bill to the 911 board, and the PSAPs were not public safety answering points, the 911 centers. The PSAPs were not responsible for any of the maintenance, updates, or the contractual requirements for that. We also have a very wonderful partnership that is guided by an interagency agreement, as well as inclusion in our our managed service contract for GIS services. Folks, GIS is the component to this that you cannot overlook. Location is priority to any NG911 system that you want to implement. Then in September of 2024, we did a renewal of our original contract from 2017 for the managed services with AT&T, who is our managed service contractor. This 7-year renewal will also come with 3 1-year renewals. But this contract renewal is really forward thinking, and it puts us in a place that we can begin to look at all the emerging technologies for 911 call service delivery. Keeping in mind when we did that initial contract in 2017, the infamous words of our former program manager for NG911, you don't know what you don't know. So we're glad to be able to share and pay it forward to our neighbors in Georgia, and stating that we really, our most recent contract, looking at that, we wanted to be able to move forward quickly with anything that was emerging. So the meat and potatoes of why we're here today, and this is still part of that governance and authority for the board and the vehicle. We want to talk with you about cost. And everyone has to look at the cost of any product, any services, any project that they put forward. I hope you can see this screen, and it gives a very, very good representation of what we've done with NG 911 since 2018. If you will just focus on the total bottom line, 2018, we expended about $3 million. In
Okay, I'm
2019, it
going
was
to interrupt you for 1 second. I don't think the slides are going with your presentation, so I'm going to get Jackson here to kind of go with
okay.
you. Because I think you may
Okay.
be about page 3 or 4 that has a spreadsheet.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, we'll get Jackson.
And I
to-
do apologize if we
No,
aren't
you're
there.
fine. I'm just
Okay.
glad we got internet connection today.
Okay. Yep, we're going to slide 7. Slide 7. And for some reason, I did stop sharing, folks. I don't know. My hands were in the air. I did not touch keyboard or the mouse, so we'll blame it on the Halloween goblins. How's that?
Okay,
There
I
we
think
go.
now.
Okay, very good. So as I noted, so for the governance and authority, looking at this is the main part to that vehicle, if you will, still using that analogy, sharing with you all what North Carolina has done expenditure wise. In 2018, you can see it was right just a little short of 3 million. 2019, right at the 8.2 million. 2020, 15.1. Increasing to 21, 28.9, almost 29 million. And then you can see for 22, 23, and 24, we hover around the 36 million, 37 million, and even into 25. And then you'll see in 2016 that we jumped significantly. And again, let me go back to what I was saying is that when we renewed our contract in 2024, going forward, we did incorporate what we would anticipate would be some emerging technologies within the 911 landscape, NG 911 landscape and ecosystem. So our contract was broadened just a little bit. But overall, if you look at that total for those 9 years, we're right at $200 million. And doing some very quick math for the citizens of North Carolina, that's about a person or about $2, just a little over $2 a year. I'm going to pause here just for a moment. I will go ahead and talk about some of the categorization of this, let you focus on that to see if you might have any questions. We did break this down into foundational cost, advanced cost, and expanded systems cost. This is deliberate because currently the NASNA, the National Association of 911 State Administrators, we're working on a project collectively with all of my counterparts across the state to look at what they have expended or anticipate expending on NG 911 so that we can provide some information going forward to complement legislation that we're hoping to get moved forward for some federal funding across the country in the near future. I have asked my colleagues through the form of a survey to provide information about what they do anticipate expending. If you look at the foundational costs, that is the core services, your network, all of those things that you need for the 911 calls to traverse. Also, the call handling equipment, that's that specialized 911 equipment. We do have an NMAC, that 24-hour knock that I spoke about. GIS is paramount. You cannot have a accurate 911 system, 911 capabilities without accurate GIS data. We also built into the foundational costs our cybersecurity assessments and our cybersecurity remediation program. In the advanced costs, we know that some states are looking at data analytics. That's capturing all the information about call volume, call flow within the 911 centers. That's the numbers, not the data of the call, but just the activity taking place with 911 calls. We also have training and then computer-aided dispatch or CAD to CAD capabilities, sharing information between PSAPs. A 911 center can answer a 911 call in North Carolina for any of the 124 911 centers funded by the North Carolina 911 Board. However, getting that information transferred between PSAPs so that a PSAP in Western North Carolina can receive information from a PSAP in Eastern North Carolina that has answered their call during a dark sky day. Then also looking at expanded costs, we know that there are some states that may have land mobile radio systems or field unit data equipment. So that was our rationale for breaking out our cost in this manner. And again, looking at about $200 million over the last 9 years. Do we have any questions there before I move on? And I'll be glad to come back to those.
What year did y'all go fully operational with NextGen?
So we are getting ready to celebrate the anniversary November 18, 2018. Our very first 911 center migrated to the statewide EZNet. Now, noting that we signed the contract in 2017, so there was a lot of work that took place up to that point, but November 18, 2018.
Can I go follow up one more? So looking at the spreadsheet that you gave us from 21, 22, 23, 24, looks like you're 28 million, had a little bump to 36, and you stay at that 35 to 36 million. Fiscal year 2026, it's going up to 54 million. What type of emerging technologies out there that would have caused that $18 million increase?
So one of the emerging technologies that we're looking at, we have brought into our catalog of services a third call handling equipment provider that is cloud native. That does have a cost to that. We are looking at some other services that we are allowing, or product and services that we're allowing the PSAPs to take advantage of through this contract. That also does include another data analytics vendor, some of the monitoring capabilities inside their PSAP that before has not been an allowed expenditure. So we have that catalog of services that we have added that to, but I will advise that the majority of that cost is that third call handling provider that we are bringing into the contract.
Okay, thank you. And Senator Robertson has a question.
Good morning.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. Just a few things. The 7-year contract, you said 3 renewals.
Yes, sir.
Each one of those renewals for 7 years also?
No, sir. And my apologies if I skipped over that. It's 3 one-year renewals. So it would be a total of 10 years for that contract.
And what's the renewal based on?
The renewal is both parties agree.
Okay, so is there evaluation or audit done after 7 years?
Yes, there is, but I can tell you there's an evaluation and audit, sir, that continues day in and day out every day from the provision of services, not only for our core services provider, but every vendor that is included in that.
So the vendors are part of the evaluation, or do you contract to the vendor to conduct the audits and the evaluations?
Okay, we do not conduct an audit per se overall as we sit down and we audit and we assess, but ongoing as we oversee the project and oversee the network, we are daily monitoring and assessing how our network is working and how all of the equipment and services are meeting the goals that are required from them, the parameters. We are contracted directly with AT&T as their managed service contract, and then they have the other vendors who are part of that contract.
Okay, so has this contract been rebid since it was initially given out?
No, sir, we did a renewal of the contract in 2024. It was initially done in 2017, and then we did a renewal of the contract in 2024 for another 7 years. We were able to do that based on the legalities of the contract and the satisfaction of both us as the client and AT&T as the provider.
Was the renewal, was it the same amount, or did the renewals increase the overall cost to the state?
Yes, sir. It did increase, and that goes back to that $54 million that I mentioned. That's because we added additional services to the catalog of services, as noted. The third call handling vendor, additional data analytics, and various other services to the PSAP. So it increased because we added product and capability.
And where was the discovery made that these new services needed to be brought in? Was that done on research based on the 911 side, or was that based on research and opportunities offered by vendors?
It was based on our research as a staff and what we were seeing in the landscape for NG 911 service delivery.
Okay, and you made a comment earlier where you said, I think in 2018, where the first 911 PSAP migrated
PSAP, yes, sir.
over, right? So is this a voluntary thing that requires the group to want to migrate into the next gen, or is this mandated by the state of North Carolina?
When we began, it was a voluntary matter that the PSAPs could elect to do this. We did have legislation come into place in 2018 that did mandate the PSAPs to do this. How ironic, though, is when that legislation was approved, we already had an 87% take rate of the PSAPs that wanted to migrate to NextGen 911, and the others just had not made their decisions known.
Okay, and so now the take rate is 100?
Yes, sir. 100% plus. So that's 100% of 124 911 centers that are funded by the North Carolina 911 Board. And then also with that, we have 23 what we call EZNet partners, such as Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, Camp Lejeune. We're in discussion with Fort Liberty, Fort Bragg. We have UNC Chapel Hill. We have hospital systems. We have other institutions of higher education who are partners with North Carolina to be on the statewide EZNet.
But they are not mandatory. They are not mandated to, correct?
No, sir. They are not.
So-
They are
so the two
volunteer
groups that are not-
partners.
So the two groups that are not mandated are the federal government and the university system?
Yes, sir. And we would not categorize them as that. It's just that just happens to be the folks who have opted to do so. They are not mandated because they are not funded by the North Carolina 911 Board.
So your university system 911 systems are not funded by the same 911 system that the rest of the state is?
No, sir, they are not.
Okay, so in an emergency on those campuses, it is based on MOUs, basically?
Now we have different configurations of how even those 23, and we have some, let me sidebar here in just a moment. We have some smaller 911 centers that are like 2-seat, 3-seat 911 centers that are not funded by the North Carolina 911 Board who've opted to be part of the statewide EZNet. Now for those, as you referenced, for the university or other campuses or other corporate locations, that they may have MOUs with their host communities, they may not. And we have a difference in some of, for instance, our military installations. One may receive only wireless calls, the other may only receive wireline calls, or the opposite could be very true. The same with our university. They may receive wireless calls or they may receive wireline calls, depending on how they are provisioned and configured to receive calls. If they do not receive call directly, it would go to the community in which they reside.
Thank you.
And also something you brought up, and let me go ahead, and I apologize for skipping over this and not mentioning that. Going back to the spreadsheet, and you will notice that it was just $2 million in 2018. And I mentioned, and thank you very much for reminding me, because we will have a celebration with Durham 911 of some sorts, even though it may just be virtual, or a shout out to them on November 18th, commemorating the day. Our managed service contract with our core services and CHE provider is AT&T. And the way our contract with them reads and how it functions is that it was a, instead of a CapEx, it was an OpEx opportunity, and that we did not begin paying anything for this contract until that very first 911 center migrated to the statewide EZNet. That's why you will see these implemental increases over the years until it was February. Tom, help me with this date. It was February 28th of 2020. 3, am I correct, Tom?
Yes,
That the last PSAP migrated. Now, keep in mind, we had COVID in there too. So you will see these incremental increases is because as the PSAPs began to migrate to the EZNet, that's when the billing began for them. Any questions on that? Okay, next slide, please. This again, speaking about the funding and some of the things that we talked about, and this will help just a little bit also to answer the question. And sir, my apologies, I did not get your name who was asking the questions. So can I have your name, please?
Is that an official request or an open records request?
Sure.
I'm Senator Randy Robertson.
Okay, Senator Robinson, thank you. Pokey Harris. So for the record, and yes, Pokey is my legal name. So yes,
That was very close. It's the traditional Scottish spelling of Robertson. And
Robertson.
yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank you, sir.
I have a nice little place I hang out at in North Carolina, and I appreciate the safety y'all provide.
Very good. And I hope you love it there just as much as I love Chickamauga. That's a beautiful region of North Carolina, of Georgia.
Definitely.
So, but please feel free to test your 911 service when you are at your location in North Carolina. And when you are here, we would love to have you come by the office and visit with us. So now sidebar and let me come back. So I was talking a moment ago about our contract and the increase that we did see from 25 to 26. Some of what we have here listed in the boxes to the right do speak to our managed service contracts, such as the 2 private networks provided by AT&T, plus a wireless capability through our FirstNet wireless redundant solution, the hosted call handling equipment, call monitoring displays, our 24-hour network and monitoring assistance center, which is our NMAC or our NOC, the GIS services, the cloud-based CAD-to-CAD data sharing, cybersecurity, dedicated 911 technicians. We have, and that was one of the other areas of increase in our 26 contract, is that we have what is referred to as a Tiger team provided to us through AT&T. We have 4 specialized trained technicians who serve as our point of contact from our NMAC, our 24-hour NOC, to one of those 4 dedicated individuals who have a region assigned to them. So we have a very clear path for issue resolution. I also mentioned the call data analytics software, which we added additional vendor to that. Our SIP administrative services that we also provide for our 911 centers for just the PSAP operational portion, that they do have a call service through an administrative capability aside from their 911 service provided to them. And then we have a resiliency compendium that we are building out. That resiliency compendium will be comprised of satellite or LEO, low Earth orbit capabilities at each 911 center, a push-to-talk radio capability at each 911 center, and some other items that we are building our resiliency capability for the PSAPs. Like I mentioned earlier, we can send 911 calls to any of the 911 centers across the state, but this provides them information or capability to exchange that information. For instance, while we are looking at the satellite capability, we know in Western North Carolina that the infrastructure was obliterated, including capability to reach internet or any way for email even to be accessed. With the satellite devices that we're going to provide to the PSAPs, they can exchange information with another PSAP through email or even through Wi-Fi telephone service. So that's just one example of our resiliency compendium. So let me stop here just a moment for you to again look at any of those boxes, our areas of service that we're providing in the current contract, to see if there might be any questions.
Yes, ma'am. Senator Robertson again. Now you
Yes,
said
Senator.
you're going to deploy satellites. Who's going to deploy the satellites?
We are currently in discussion with AT&T to provide to us the satellite devices, the implementation, installation, monitoring, and ongoing maintenance and upkeep of those. And we'll be adding that to our managed service contract. Once they make a determination of the vendor, we will discuss that with them.
That's right. So do you know who or do you know who their vendor is? Is this just one of the new LEO systems, or is this something with a company like Starlink or something like that that'll provide this type of satellite service?
Starlink is one of the vendors that they have spoken with. We are in negotiations to make determination on who that vendor will be.
And what's the anticipated date of deployment of this type of technology?
So that is going to depend on our contract revision, as well as our procurement process here in the state. We're hoping by first quarter that we will be able to do this, first quarter of calendar 26.
And is this additional funding required, or is this funding already available through through what you currently collect?
This is already funding available through our Next Generation 911 Special Reserve Fund.
Okay, so there needs to be an anticipated cost, right?
Yes, sir. And that
What do you anticipate that cost to be?
Okay, that anticipated cost is included in that budget for that 54.2, 54.3 for our managed service contract with AT&T.
And was this amount done post Hurricane Helene, or was this something prior to?
This was post Hurricane Helene, sir. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You are very welcome, and thank you for asking those questions. Oh, I'm over here doing my own slides. Next slide, please. This is just a visual that I do want to share with you based on our 26 budget year that we're in, and it's hard to believe that we're almost at the halfway mark for fiscal year. What I want to share with you is our anticipated service charge allocation is 93 million. That's what we would collect. And then we do anticipate expenditures of 123 million. And that is because that we do have a fund balance that has accumulated because of setting aside those funds for NG 911, and we do anticipate for the fiscal year being expending the 123 million. I will note that this 41% of the anticipated revenue and expenditure is for NG 911, and cumulatively, it is a 90% direct benefit to the PSAPs. So that's leaving that 2% that we look at for administrative or operational cost. However, even within that 2% operations and administrative costs, there are projects that are direct benefit to the 911 center. So we are at 99% direct benefit to the PSAP, with that other 1% that I would say that because of our staff and the other projects that we do provide to the PSAPs, that's still a direct benefit to the PSAPs. Again, this was just a visual that I wanted to share with you all about the funding stream in North Carolina. Kristen's going to speak a little later, just a little bit more about the utilization of the 911 fund. Next slide, please.
Pokey, real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. This is Senator Bearden. So under the North Carolina 911 Board fiscal year 26 service charge allocation, that's what you're getting from the like $1.50 fees that charged to cell phones and landlines, or?
If we can back up to that slide, and I will note, and my apologies, I should have had that written somewhere in my notes, but I try to keep it in the recesses of my mind. North Carolina has a 55-cent service charge now. So that's 55 cents on all devices any device that is able to dial 911. It is the responsibility of the carriers for that billing and then remittance to the 911 board. So yes, to answer your question, sir, and it is 55 cents.
Let me ask you one more question with that. On 55 cents charge on any device I can call 911. I'm going to throw my daughter under the bus here. She has 3 devices, all one phone number to those devices. Does she get one charge for the one phone number, or does the cell phone, iWatch, and iPad, all 3 get a charge?
They all 3 get a charge because they all 3 have a separate number assigned to it.
Okay.
Well, hang on. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pokey. This is Senator John Albers. You mentioned that each one of your daughter's devices would be charged at 55 cents. Based on what? By the fact it's got a unique MAC address, or how are they determining all three?
It's a phone number assigned to that, sir, that is able to dial 911.
Okay. Well, in this case, she probably is not paying three then, because unless she's got a cellular plan set up on all three. This is a conversation we're having, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this. Our fee is $1.50, but I always use my house as an example. We got 11 devices that can all reach 911, and only 4 of them are actually paying the $1.50 fee. Because the other ones, like watches and things of that nature, that if they're set up separately, they can just pair to your current phone. So it sounds like you're just doing one per phone number, though. Is that right?
It would be one per phone number, yes, that can dial 911.
So what are your thoughts if from Georgia's perspective, what if we leveled it to one to everything that's connecting to the internet?
That would be a decision that you would have to make based on your anticipated needs for revenue for deployment of NG911.
Okay. Well, we can talk about it more later. We're more curious. That was a very good answer. You should run for office.
Well, they tell me I am good at shaking hands and kissing babies. So maybe in my retirement, I will consider that. Thank you.
All of your time, Terry, not pokey, but I'm curious of how you can do that with 55 cents. We're at $1.50 and seemingly straining.
So what we have done, Senator, is through the years is we have began setting aside the fund. We had that special revenue fund that was established in 2017. And then if you would, again, going back to the visual for the state, for our expenditures, we entered into a contract that we did not pay our vendor until a PSAP migrated to the EZNet. So we were still collecting while we were migrating. So that allowed us to have a surplus of funds in order, and I don't like to say surplus because folks do sometimes take that erroneously, but we did have adequate funding for the payment of our deployment of NG911.
I would say, Chairman Albers, we do have the Wireless Association. I'll be speaking a little bit later, so that might be a great question for them to answer if they want to get prepped for that answer.
Okay, and next slide, please. So let me just talk a bit about our route, if you will, here about what we are doing in 911. We do have the NG911 space. We do have the statewide EZNet, Emergency Services Internet Protocol. And as Senator Robertson did bring to light, it is mandated that all 911 centers are required to mandate or for connectivity if you are funded by the North Carolina 911 Board. I have referenced the 124 911 PSAPs and our 23 partners. This provides for us alternate 911 routing and abandonment 911 routing, meaning alternate 911 routing, blue sky days. If for some reason all of your telecommunicators in a PSAP are busy answering 911 calls and the call volume surpasses the number of telecommunicators available, it can automatically alternate route to another PSAP to take your call. The other portion of call routing is abandonment call routing. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you abandon your facility. It just means that there's no way that anyone at your facility can answer a 911 call. So the call is not even routed to the 911 center. Through provisioning, it bypasses and then goes to the 911 center that is assigned to answer your 911 calls. This does provide interoperability between all PSAPs in North Carolina who are on the EZNet, and then it will even provide interoperability to all of the PSAPs in North Carolina, particularly those that in Georgia, those that I've referenced that are our neighbors. And then we have that investment in GIS maximizing the I3 standardization. The I3 standardization is a NENA standard for geospatial call routing in 911. I will go ahead and note that I do hope in the very near future that we do see this ability to have those calls back and forth across the state line, because on occasion, Stephanie, as the regional coordinator for the western part of North Carolina, logistically, way, it's easier for her to stay in Georgia and then go to her 911 centers. Now, we have to get special permission for that for our travel authorization, but sometimes we do travel into Georgia for our work. So, and if I can have the next slide, please. And at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Tom Rogers, who is, as I introduced him earlier, our NG911 network engineer and program manager. He's going to speak a little bit about our architectural design in North Carolina. Tom?
Thank you, Pokey. All right, so Pokey's talked about a lot of the governance and authority and the funding and how that allows us to provide the next generation, I can't even say it this morning, next generation 911 throughout our state. So the diagram you see is our hosted setup, and that covers 96% of our public safety answering points, or our PSAPs, as we've talked about before. So on the left, 911 calls begin with the originating service provider, or OSPs, then routing through the aggregation sites and into AT&T's Emergency Services IP network, or EZNet, and you're going to hear that term a lot as you go forward. The AT&T EZNet is a resilient, nationwide private network where 911 call routing occurs, sending those 911 calls to the appropriate destinations. And like Pokey just mentioned, this is where that alternate abandonment routing takes place and some of the other things that we do, which we'll hear a little bit more about in a little bit. Once processed through the EZNet, the calls route to our 2 geodiverse data centers over redundant and diverse AVPN connections. And AVPN is AT&T's virtual private network. Those data centers are represented by those greenish blocks there toward the center of your screen. The blue cloud area to the right, as labeled Hosted Call Handling AVPN, is where our multiple hosts are connected to the PSAPs. They're also connected to the PSAPs there. And we also call those 911 centers, which you've heard. This is a last mile network, and we utilize 2 diverse AVPN connections, as well as an additional FirstNet connection at each PSAP. And this is the FirstNet Pokey was talking about just a few moments ago, and we can dive deeper into that if you like. Back near the top left of the screen there, you'll see the NMAC that Pokey mentioned earlier. This is our Network Monitoring and Assistance Center, and it functions as 911 for 911 in North Carolina. We monitor the network, and we also provide triage for any call handling issues that any PSAP might experience. And like Pokey also mentioned, the NMAC is akin to a NOC because this is AT&T's network. We do not own the network, therefore we do not make adjustments in the network directly. So we monitor it and ensure that everything is operating as expected. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about any of this. It gets a little nerdy, I know.
Yes, the nerd herd is with you today. Tom, one of the things that I will note, again, talking about the wireless redundant solution that is provided through the FirstNet. Senator Robertson, I'll go back to the question that you asked about the increase from 2025 to 2026. The cost for that resiliency, that redundancy is part of that contract increase as well, sir.
And just looking at this diagram, so you got data centers and cloud handling a lot of this technology, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you're going to be putting in satellites hopefully next year as well to kind of make sure you have the communications at all times.
So like Pokey mentioned, we can move the 911 calls anywhere from any PSAP to PSAP or anywhere within that network. Those satellites will not be used to actually send 911 calls. This is actually moving the data from those 911 calls from PSAP to PSAP. So if your particular PSAP is not online and I take your call for you, I can relay that information, and that satellite ensures that I'm going to have a connection to relay that information in an incident like Helene, where most of the infrastructure was literally ripped from the ground.
So it just goes to show us technology is changing on a daily basis, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we definitely do want to be very clear here that that the 911 calls will not be traversing a satellite connection. That satellite capability for internet that we are providing to the PSAPs is for operational means for them so that they can have that internet connection for the email, for Wi-Fi calling, for push-to-talk radios. That allows them that interoperability between PSAP and to PSAP.
Thank you.
Okay. So, any other questions for Tom?
And I'll be
And
here
we'll
if we need to go back.
Yes, we'll be happy after looking at this. We will be more than happy to go back. That's why we're here to provide information. I feel like that where we are now in North Carolina, it's our responsibility and obligation to pay this forward to our other friends, colleagues, and neighbors. So we are here to answer any questions that you have at any given time, and we'll be happy to even entertain conversations, phone calls, Teams meetings with you all to help clarify or share additional information. So next slide, please. So I always, since we've been talking about the NG911 benefits in North Carolina, we've talked about Hurricane Helene, because Hurricane Helene was the validation. In my opening remarks from the quote from Picasso, I talked about success. And there's absolutely no way that we are going to equate success with the obliteration and decimation of Hurricane Helene. There is nothing celebratory about that. And when you think about success, you think about celebration. But we're going to talk more about validation because Helene was the most horrific weather event that North Carolina has seen. Helene was the most horrific event that was seen really in the United States as you begin to compare and rank and categorize. Next slide, please. These are actual photos that were taken and shared with us or that we took ourselves. The one photo that I draw your attention to on the left with the arrow, you will see that there's a slight portion of a building sticking out of the water, out of the flood. And this would have been a PSAP that would have been operational had they not been able to acquire a grant from the North Carolina 911 Board a few years earlier to move from that facility. As a matter of fact, the PSAP manager stepped out on the property of their current 911 center and grabbed the photo of that and sent it to us. The intensity, the horizontal angle, and the fast-moving motion of Helene was more than anything can handle. And particularly as we look at Western North Carolina, the words here, devastation, destruction, obliteration. We could add decimation to that because the loss of life was horrific. And the catastrophic flooding destroyed businesses, homes, infrastructure. Lives were changed forever. Not only as we look at the death toll, but the folks who sustained injuries, the folks who lost their livelihood, who lost their businesses, century-old businesses that had been handed down for generations. So when you think of an incident of this magnitude and all of the obliteration, and we'll go to the next slide, please. Because in this you can see that's Lake Lure with all of the destruction below. I'm not exactly sure which photo that is. I believe that one came out of the Buncombe County, Asheville area. But amongst all of that is the infrastructure for these communities. And that infrastructure included the telecommunications infrastructure. But folks, what I can tell you and how we validate as we talk about all of this destruction, the statewide EZNet did not falter. There were 19 911 centers in Western North Carolina. And again, I ask you to just indulge me in this. I try every time when we talk about this not to let my emotions show, but it's hard when you really think about the magnitude of this. 19 911 centers in Western North Carolina, they were able to route their 911 calls to 23 other 911 centers because of North Carolina's EZNet. 17 of those were an abandonment route. And as I explained to you earlier, what abandonment route is the 911 call did not even attempt to be delivered to the local 911 center. It went to a predetermined, designated, agreed upon 911 center for the answering and processing of their call. 2 PSAPs had the policy or alternate route to multiple partners in place. Buncombe County was one that they had 5, and Stephanie, remind me, it was 5 or 7 911 centers taking their calls.
8.
Well, I missed that one, didn't I? So it was, what we did was load balancing. So Buncombe County, the Asheville area that was hit the hardest, those calls were alt routed through policy or alt routed through load balancing to 8 other 911 centers. To our knowledge today, and we're 11 months now into this, we have heard of no 911 call that a caller could reach a dial tone not being answered by a trained telecommunicator in a 911 center in North Carolina. That, folks, is validation. That is validation of the investment of the North Carolina 911 Board. It cannot be, again, nothing celebratory. And we do call it success in the manner of validation. But it cannot be dismissed that the investment of the North Carolina 911 Board certainly was tested and validated with Hurricane Helene. Next slide, please. You'll notice in quotes we have the math after. And that was a term that Tom and I coined the day that staff was in the western part of the state. There were 8 or 10 of us. We had gone to visit with some of the 911 centers just to go there and hug people and say thank you for everything that you've done. But we drove back through Madison, North Carolina, and Madison was the most, probably the county that was hit the most. And what we were seeing, just as then the pictures do not in any way truly depict what happened. Much more horrific. But when you look at this, we kept thinking the aftermath of this. But then knowing that we were going to need to put together information to document what had happened and to validate it, we coined the term math after because of needing to have those statistics behind this. So that's why you will see the math after in the quotes. Again, we talked about the PSAPs earlier routing their calls to the 19 PSAPs routing their calls to the 23 PSAPs. But one county, and that county is Madison County, was in the abandonment state for 1 month, meaning they did not take a single 911 call. And why? Because the infrastructure was decimated. It did not exist. It was gone. For 1 month, Chatham County, 220 miles away, took their 911 calls. And they created a methodology procedure to get that call information back from Chatham County to Madison County so that the call could be dispatched accordingly. Also, let me sidebar here just a moment and say that I mentioned that any caller that could get a dial tone was able to dial 911 and a trained telecommunicator answered. But folks, the reality of this was even though a 911 call, telecommunicator could answer, there were areas of Western North Carolina that resources could not be sent to them. Roads were gone. Apparatus was not available because it too had washed away or was destroyed. EMS could not go because there were no providers to go from their facility because their facility was no longer there. But those folks who could reach 911, who could reach a dial tone, dial 911, and a provider could get to them, help was sent. And it was through the mechanism of our statewide EasyNet that even though a telecommunicator 220 miles away took the call, they could relay the information back to their home 911 center. And hopefully, for that call, they were able to send the appropriate resources. So going back to Madison County for 1 month, Madison County's calls were answered by Chatham County. And at that time, we were working for implementation of that FirstNet backup solution, that FirstNet wireless redundant solution. And again, Senator Robertson, I'll go back to that was one of our increased costs, as you saw in our contract. And we were working to implement this FirstNet solution. And again, it's a FirstNet solution designed to complement our statewide EasyNet. It's not open for other responders or public safety responders in the community. This is specifically to provide a connection to the statewide EasyNet. And while the calls were going to Chatham County, Stephanie, as the regional coordinator for Madison County, came to me. She said, Pokey, I want to ask you something. I've already talked with Tom. We can do this, but we need a decision to fast track implementing the FirstNet solution.
And Pokey, before you get too far, Senator Wicks had a question. I didn't want to get too far from her
Oh,
question.
go right ahead, sir.
Good morning, and thank you so much for your presentation. But I just wanted to touch on, we talk about storms and weather. How does it affect the rural areas in reference to the infrastructure and the broadband?
Okay, for broadband, I cannot speak to you about broadband. I do have my colleague that I am sure that if you would allow me to make introduction, that she would speak to you about the broadband in the western part of the state. But I can tell you for the statewide EasyNet, I cannot be more rural than what I'm speaking to you about Madison County today.
Okay.
Madison County, ma'am, was one of the most devastated counties in western North Carolina. So devastated that as we talk about this FirstNet capability for the redundant connection of what would be in place of their commercial telecommunications provider for that connection to the statewide EasyNet, we were beginning to the implementation, and Stephanie came to me after talking with Tom, and she said, Pokey, can we fast track connection for Madison County? That way they can have their 911 calls routed back to them instead of going to Chatham County. Well, as the executive director, I had to think hard and fast about this because I wanted it to work correctly, but I didn't want us to move it so quickly that we would fail with it. But after considerable prayer about this, I said, yes, let's go forward. So the FirstNet connection for Madison County, so that their EasyNet, to provide that last mile connection to their EasyNet, was put into place. They fast tracked it within 2 weeks. And folks, that was on October 24th of 2024. Today is...
Got one more question for you. I'm sorry to jump in, but
Okay.
I'm trying not to let you get too far from the questions.
That's fine.
And Senator Robertson.
Hey, Pokey, this is Senator Robertson. I feel a little odd calling you Pokey. I'm used to calling people
That's
by
my
their last,
name.
by their
Sir,
last
that
name.
is my name, please.
Yeah. I used to watch Gumby as a kid, so it takes on a whole different
Where
thing.
is my Gumby? He's here
Listen,
somewhere.
you're talking us through this. I just want to be clear. There was obviously an after action report done on this based on 911 response and all the issues y'all ran into, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that publicly available?
Sir, not at this time. We are finalizing. We have done a cursory review with the PSAP community. We're hoping that it will be finalized once we get all the components of our resiliency compendium in place. But
So when y'all-
Senator, oh,
Go
yes,
ahead.
sir. I wish I could give you a date. We are working, like I said a moment ago, about our satellite capability, our push to talk. We're trying to get some dates defined to put that in our after action as part of our resiliency compendium. But Senator, what you're hearing today is our after action report.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I know this after action report based on a 100-year type event like this is going to be voluminous, and I hope it's very granular due to the fact that with us moving in this direction, I think that's something that we would need to have to make decisions moving forward with what kind of redundancy, what kind of resources we would need. And also something you said earlier, I want to go back to quickly. When y'all mandated this, did you receive any pushback from any of the centers on the fact that they were being mandated to be a part of this program?
We had very limited, sir, but by the time that the mandate was put forward, we were like at the 88% take rate. We did have a couple of PSAPs that were like that they did not really want to do that. But
And
then
what do you
after
what do
they
you think their primary reason for not wanting to do that was?
their loss of autonomy, possibly. I
So
wish I
ego?
could. That, sir, you may be onto something there.
Yeah, they call me Frank for a reason. It's not my
Well,
name.
So, yes,
But
sir.
listen, and I understand this may be, it reaches into other areas, but the impact that an after action report from North Carolina would have, not just on 911 in Georgia, but beyond our state and many other states, would be extremely important. So I certainly hope that y'all appreciate the value of that and taking that into consideration, because I think here, and this is my personal opinion, and three of us on this, or all of us on this committee have been involved in public safety and first response work for our entire careers. Understand that it's hard to move forward when we don't have all the information from these catastrophic events that happen, whether we're talking about Columbine High School or whether we're talking about Hurricane Helene. So I look forward to that report coming out, and I hope that we can get it in our hands soon.
As soon as that is ready for public dissemination, I will make sure Alicia has a copy of that, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
You are more than welcome. But again, let me say to you all today that what you are hearing is a large part of the content of our after action report. So getting back to today's date, which is 10/30/2025, 1 year and 6 days after the FirstNet connectivity for Madison County was provided, Madison County still is operational, single-threaded with that FirstNet connectivity as their last mile connection to the statewide EZNet. To date, there have not been any issues or concerns, and Madison County does answer their 911 calls today. Stephanie was there the day that they were able to turn their 911 calls back to them. She said it was, they were thrilled in the best way that they could be, because for 1 month they had not received their calls. The PSAP 220 miles away had done so. Next slide, please. Again, talking about the math after, and I'm going to go very quickly through this, is as we began realizing that Hurricane Helene was going to impact North Carolina and what potentially could take place, we began planning internally, and we began looking at what potentially could be alternate routes or abandonment routes. I show you this for visualization only and not for specific PSAP to PSAP, but we're very willing to discuss that with you all at a later date. Next slide, please. And this is the reality. As I noted, this is the visual for the 19 PSAPs to the 23 PSAPs across the state. This can, we even had some going from the mountains down to the coast for load balancing, for alternate routing, and abandonment routing. Next slide, please. Again, providing this to you as a visualization of that math after and some of the numbers. This speaks to the averages of increases in calls. We did comparison to the year before, the day the 1 year day before to the actual date of impact. You can see some of the increases, such as the 586% increase from 2023. But folks, factored into that, we had one PSAP that saw a 13,100% increase in their call volume. I will note that the statewide EZNet carried all of these calls as intended and as designed. Next slide, please. Referencing Buncombe County, which was Asheville, and we do use Asheville as a point of reference because they did get all of the national attention. But on a typical day in Asheville, their call count was about 443. So this was the day before impact. And next slide, please. 5,009 on the day of the impact. So you can see that that was over an 800% increase from the same date in the prior year. Next slide, please. So just a few things to wrap up this section that we've talked about. If dial tone was accessible, the 911 call went through, wireline or wireless. The stability of the statewide EZNet to date from November 2018 to date, it has been rock solid with no issues with the EZNet itself, the core services. The planning of the alternate route and abandonment routes saved time in the heat of the moment. We had folks days prior to Helene's impact, even though the PSAPs are required by state statute to have a backup plan, and now that backup plan does include having their alt route and abandonment route, we still had some of the PSAPs that were going to be in the impact zone that had not provided information or had not worked diligently to identify their partners, or what we call friends in North Carolina. So our 911 regional coordinators were working with them. The PSAP communication to convey all the information to the correct jurisdictions when all the traditional means were obliterated as well or overtaxed. For instance, our statewide radio system, for some time, it was extremely saturated. So that's why that we know we've been able to, looking at the satellite capability or the push-to-talk capability, we do know that some of the PSAPs, they began using Teams for Teams channel chats between PSAPs. We know some started using Google spreadsheets to share information, and that's become part of their SOPs or SOGs for operations in the PSAP. And one of the biggest things is the PSAP's willingness to help each other in the times of crisis. Next slide, please. So the 911 board, the 911 board's focus area will be the 911 call delivery, redundancy, and resiliency. The commitment to continuing identifying those friends in North Carolina, each PSAP within the region that they exist, they have to have a friend PSAP for alt route or abandonment route, but then we've extended that to where they will have a friend PSAP in one of the other 3 regions of the state. So they basically have 4 friend PSAPs for alternate routing and abandonment routing. And that rolls right into the 911 call data interoperability and now Gen 2.0, which goes back to all the resiliency items of the compendium I have been discussing with you. So before I hand it off to Kristen to talk about our 911 service charge as a whole, let me ask if there are any more questions that you have for me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to hand it off to Kristen. Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
Nope, you're good. I think Kristen will cover what we're about to ask.
Okay, so we're going to hand it off to Kristen. She's going to talk about the 911 service charge. And then after her, Stephanie is going to talk about our grant program. So, Kristen, to you, ma'am.
All right, good morning still, I guess. As Pokey mentioned, we do have the 55-cent monthly fee for subscribers who are able to have some kind of either wireline or wireless connectivity to be able to dial 911. When those fees are collected by the board, they're then distributed into 4 different accounts. One is the NextGen 911 fund, which Pokey just talked about in depth. We also have an administrative fund, which supports our staff. And then we have a PSAP fund, which provides distributions for the 124 PSAPs that are funded by the board. Then we also have a statewide projects and grants account. Just a little bit of percentages and information here. Per the state statute, the NextGen fund has to receive a minimum of 15% of the collection of the fees for the fiscal year, and the administrative account has to receive at least 1% of the collection. The PSAP grants and statewide projects account has to receive a minimum of 5%. Presently, the percentages approved by the 911 board for fiscal year 2026 was 41% of the fee collection for NextGen 911. 33% of that collection for PSAP distributions, 3% for administrative operations, and then 23% for state and grant and statewide projects accounts. So speaking specifically about the PSAP account and those distributions that are made to our PSAPs, all 113 primary PSAPs receive monthly distributions based on a 5-year rolling average. And then the 11 secondary PSAPs receive a distribution that's based on a cost per call. So that would be any calls that are transferred to that secondary PSAP from the primary, and then also figuring in how many calls that primary takes, and then how many or how their expenditures have looked over the past 5 years. The expenditures that the PSAPs can use those distributions for are spelled out in our general statute 143B-1406. They're kind of a broad description there in that general statute. And then we've got it more broken out in administrative code. And then we also have a approved use of funds policy, which is voted on by the board. And that goes into a lot more detail as far as what they can use their funds for. And then we have a equipment replacement best practice policy that kind of outlines when they should be replacing that hardware or software based on best practices. So some examples of eligible expenditures would include telecommunicator training, CAD modules that are necessary for the call taking process, for the 911 center, and then radio components for call processing and dispatching 911 call information. The statute is very specific in saying that purchases must be made exclusively for the PSAP, not anything that's outside of the PSAP walls. So also including workstation furniture, computers, headsets, monitors, anything that they need to be able to have a telecommunicator sit there and dispatch 911 call information and be able to receive that 911 call information. So for fiscal year 2025, the distribution made to the PSAPs was a little over almost 21 million. And then in 26, it was 27.5 million. So it fluctuates depending on the reports that we receive annually for the PSAPs that outlines everything that they have used their distributions for.
We have one question for you for now.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. This is Senator Robertson. Are any portion of these fees used for salaries for 911 dispatchers?
No, sir. Statute says that we cannot, or the funds cannot be used to pay for salaries for telecommunicators or anyone in the PSAP.
Okay, so that's the responsibility of the individual counties then?
Correct. Counties or municipalities that are receiving the funding. Yes, sir.
Right. And okay, because I think our $1.50 can. So okay. That
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Any other questions on this? You covered it on that one.
All right. And I guess I will hand it over to Stephanie for the next couple.
Move to the next slide. So part of the 911 fee also, as Kristen spoke to with the PSAP grants, the legislation is very specific about what can be paid from the fund for the PSAPs, but the board also has made a path for these PSAPs to cover expenses that are not eligible. And that's through through statewide projects and through PSAP grants. 2 of our statewide projects are interpretive services and ortho imagery. So for the interpretive services, the board has contracted with a vendor. We provide that vendor to all of the PSAPs across the state that receive 911 funding for primary PSAPs. Secondary PSAPs can also take part in the interpretive services contracts, and they pay that from their cost per call. So the interpretive services allows them to take 911 calls, use that interpretive services to interpret that call. And I believe they do about 138 languages. And that is at no cost to the PSAPs. The board pays for that cost. Ortho imagery also this is a project that has been done for many, many years for the PSAPs. Every 4 years, the regions are split up in the state, and we contract with their state GIS folks to do this project, and they do ortho imagery of all of the counties, and all of those pictures or all of that data from the ortho imagery is provided to the PSAP, and they can use that in the county how they see fit. We give it to the PSAP, and then what they do with it from then is up to the PSAP and the county, but they are welcome to use that. That is also paid by the board. Then we also have the PSAP grants. If you can go to the next slide. So PSAP grants allow the PSAP to come forward and ask for items that are not that they cannot pay for through the fund. In the last 10 years, the 911 board has awarded $129 million in grants. The majority of those grants are for new buildings because you cannot brick and mortar, nothing inside of the building can be paid for out of the fund. If it's considered part of the facility, then that is part of the county's upkeep and responsibility. But since that is an ineligible cost, the PSAPs can come forward and apply for a grant. We have done many building grants. They can also ask for radio infrastructure, because radio is another thing that is expressly laid out in legislation as to what is eligible and what is not. So we do have a lot of radio grants that come forward. We also have, this year specifically, we've seen some things come forward for telecommunicator wellness, such as a training program that focuses on wellness, and also massage chairs. Seems like a small thing, but when you have telecommunicators taking a multitude of calls that are high stress, having a moment to just go sit and relax and not think about things is a big comfort. And so the grant has paid for that. The grants are provided under North Carolina rules and legislation. They are available to primary PSAPs. They are not available to secondaries, but they are available to primary PSAPs. We do have a committee that reviews the applications. The committee also selects their grant priorities throughout the year. And the priority does not mean that if someone submits a priority 1 versus a priority 5, that they have a better chance of receiving the grant. It is a competitive grant process. So all applications are viewed on their merits and how their application is written and what they are asking for. So just because you have somebody who submits a priority 1 versus a priority 5 does not mean that they will get that over top of the next priority. That's just what the grant committee tries to put in place to keep the grant applications in line as they come through. Once the grant committee approves the grants that they wish to award, it does go before the board for a vote. And then the process starts. We do have our legal counsel that drafts the grant agreements. Those agreements are sent to the PSAPs. They must follow what is in the grant agreement in order to receive their reimbursement for the projects. They do have to provide a monthly grant report and a closeout once the grant is complete. Again, those grants cover all the ineligible expenditures. Anything that is eligible through the fund has to be paid from the fund. So for instance, if we have someone coming forward to request money to build a new facility, the console furniture, chairs, CAD, recorder, servers, things of that nature, they will have to figure into their eligible expenditures. We also have an avenue, I believe Kristen explained. If they don't have enough money in their eligible expenditures, they can ask for a reconsideration to give them the money they need to pay for those expenditures. So whether it's an eligible expense or an ineligible expense, the board has given an avenue for all these PSAPs to afford what they need for their centers, for their PSAPs. These grants are also not a matching grant. We do not, the board does not require the the locality to match what is given. Because some PSAPs, I know as Madam Senator spoke to a moment ago, we also have a lot of rural PSAPs, and they would not have the ability to do that. So this grant awards them the opportunity to get the equipment that they need and help the county or the locality with not having to put forth matching money in order to receive that grant. The grant program has been very successful. This is something that we do every single year. And we typically have between 10 and 20, and sometimes even more, depending on a PSAP and what their needs are. But we usually have multiple applications, and the grant committee tries very hard to award all of those applications within the budget that they have with grant funds. Any questions about grant funds or the statewide projects?
I don't see any.
Thanks.
All right, I believe I'm turning it back to Pope.
Thank you, ma'am. Next slide, please. So, recap. We discussed with you today the funding of NG 911, the deployment of NG 911, benefits of NG 911, and the use of the 911 North Carolina 911 service fee. Next slide, please. We're going to close out. I want to share something with you that has become our unofficial tagline. NG 911, not theory, battle tested. It's no longer theory that NG 911 works as designed and intended, because in North Carolina it has been battle tested. Unfortunately, Hurricane Helene was the battle that we faced. So with that, I will open it up for questions. Senator Robertson, I went to my desk and looked.
It didn't take you long to learn this, did you?
Gumby and Pokey.
Are there any questions for the from the committee? Senator?
It's obvious to me that she's been talking to some of our friends in Georgia.
Wow.
So
What?
I've
They don't
watched
know. Nobody's ever said anything. You're one of the most recent people to say anything about Gumby and Pokey, so I had to go get them.
all that does is point out the fact that I'm 63 years old. It doesn't give me any benefit, but
We're the same age, Senator.
Well, I do appreciate the fact that our friends in Georgia prepared you for the meeting, and I think you did an outstanding job. Thank you so much.
So, thank you so much.
And Pokey, I want to say again, just like Senator Robertson, thank you so much. North Carolina probably, and Georgia felt it too, but North Carolina probably had one of the worst natural disasters that we could imagine. And we just appreciate everything that you did, everyone in the first responder community. I know it's a long recovery effort. We're still recovering here. But thank you so much for taking your time, and your team taking time today to speak with us on the Senate committee. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We do hope that it was helpful. Please feel free to call us at any time, given time. And we're going to leave you all to conduct other business today as necessary, because we all do have a jam-packed calendar. Again, we humbly thank you for allowing us to be with you today.
Well, y'all have a good weekend, a safe Halloween. So
Okay.
thank you so much.
You. Bye-bye.
Before we get to the next person, we do have a sign-up sheet in the back. I do want to be clear, if you signing up for public comments, and it depends on how much time we have to how long public comments will occur. Public comments must be relevant to NextGen 911. Any other comments or testimony that tries to take place will not be allowed. So if you want to sign up and speak about NextGen 911, we do have a sign-up sheet. Anything other than that, please don't. So with that, we're going to move forward with our next person on the list, CTIA, the Wireless Association, a U.S. trade group for the wireless industry. And I believe that is Scott.
Thank you, Senator.
Well, you signed up on the public comment, so I guess I can take you off that one. Then you threw a curveball on me on that one. So please introduce yourself, and we appreciate it.
You only want to hear me speak once. My name is Scott Mackey. I'm a partner at Leonine Public Affairs up in Vermont. I'm here on behalf of CTIA, the Wireless Trade Association, and I also do work directly with AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon mostly on state tax and fee policy across the country. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I guess the only thing I would take issue with what Pokey said is my daughter is from Yancey County, which is just northeast of Asheville, and they would probably tell you that their damage was worse than Madison County. In fact, there was no infrastructure left to call 911, and that pretty much in the entire county, the Yancey County Emergency Operations Center was completely inoperable. And I had to fly in Starlink for my daughter and her family, so that was a little triggering for me too. Okay, so what I'd like to do today, and do I have the clicker? Okay, great. What am I pointing at? There, okay. So this is an overview. I just want to go through quickly the CTIA principles that they put together several years back talking about NG 911. And then I'm going to present a lot of data to you. Most of it comes from the FCC report on 911 fees and NextGen 911. And then also going to talk briefly about some wireless trends that might be in fact impacting 911 fee collections. And I will come back to Senator Albert's question about the devices. And then I'll try to summarize and offer up some key points. But before I start, let me just preface with, I've heard people say, well, why does the industry care? These are pass through. Why do you care if fees are low or high? And I'll just say, first of all, that, 911 fees and other taxes do impact how much service we can sell to our consumers, because we provide service to people from the richest to the poorest folks. Price does matter when we're trying to sell service to our customers, and particularly the way we price our service and sell our service, where typically when you're in a multi-line household, the first line is more and then each successive line is less. So some of these flat per line fees, as opposed to percentage type taxes, they can be the largest line item governmental tax fee surcharge on people's bill. So it does have an impact. And in fact, if you look at what's going on in the wireless industry since 2012, if you look at the BLS statistics, the price for our service has actually declined 18%, while goods and services in the general economy have increased over 30%. So there is a lot of competition in our industry that drives down prices. And the reason why is because consumers are very sensitive to price. At the same time, we're also facing a massive demand and increase due to all these apps that your daughter with her 11 or your family with 11 devices using a lot of bandwidth and a lot of data. And so we're constantly have these capital expenditure pressures to keep up with that demand. And so we have this situation where prices are falling and our capital expenditure needs are increasing. And so the price does matter. But secondly, if you survey wireless consumers and ask them, what are the most important things that you value in wireless? The safety and security of being able to call 911 is extremely important to wireless consumers. So we care about this on both sides. We want the service to work. We want it to work well, but we also are sensitive to the fact that these fees can add up on customer bills. So let me go to the CTIA policy considerations. I did provide to the staff the full, it's just a 2-page sheet, but I'm just going to summarize them here. Most of these things you guys already do in Georgia, so but some of them might be something you look at as you move forward with this conversation. First of all, the fee should be on end users, and in most states it is. There should be a single statewide rate administered by the state. You also do that in Georgia. You made that switch over a decade ago. the legislature should set the rate in statute. We believe that, you know, the accountability should be with the elected officials to set the rates. There are some states that either delegate it to a board or other entities that can set the rate, but we believe it should be set in statute. Now, number 4 is the rub here, and you've already alluded to this in the conversations you've already had. You know, we believe strongly that there should not be diversions, and collected fees should only be spent on 911. The rub is, what does your state consider to be an allowable expenditure for 911? We believe they should be defined in statutes, but even where they are defined in statutes, there is a huge range of what state statutes permit 911 fee revenues to be spent on. It's our belief that they should be primarily limited to capital cost and should not be paying for personnel and salaries, but that's a policy decision that each state has made over the years, and it's evolved differently in different states. If you think back to when wireless, kind of before wireless, you generally had one fee per household, and for the most part, the 911 fees were set up to pay just for the capital costs. But what's happened, and I'm going to get to more of this when I get to the wireless trends, but what happened is there was a massive explosion in the amount of money that was coming in, and I think what states did over time is that they liberalized what the fees could be used on, to the point where now there's a significant disparity in the states, which is, when I get to the fee disparity, the range of fees, most of it is explained by that. We believe there should be annual audits done on 911 expenditures, and they should be provided to the legislature and the public. It's also, at least our understanding, and we're willing to be corrected on this, once the NG 911 migration is complete, and I know they have to run parallel systems for a while, but at some point there should be some cost reductions that are able to occur, and we believe that the legislature should look at, once that happens, look at reducing those fees accordingly. The next one, state level coordination incentives should be provided to assist with PPAP consolidation if regional PSAPs could provide services more efficiently. That's not going to be the case in every state, and I'm going to provide a little bit of detail on the number of PSAPs. It's certainly not the case that there needs to be consolidation in every state, but this is one of our national principles. And then finally, this may be a pipe dream on our part, but we believe that eventually, because these are broad-based services that benefit the public, over time, states, to the extent they can, should be phasing out of dependence on 911 fees to pay for the system, and it should be moved back to state and local general revenues. So those are the policy principles of CTIA. Appreciate the opportunity to share them. And now let me switch to some of the data that I think you'd asked to present. So I'm sorry about you're probably not going to be able to read these states, but basically this is a chart showing 911 fees, and this is wireless 911 fees, from highest to lowest. And so you can see they vary from 0 per month to $4.01 per line per month. The $4.01 is West Virginia, the 0 is Missouri, and the states on this chart, I kind of highlighted the states around Georgia. Georgia and Tennessee are at $1.50, Alabama's at $2.23, and then South Carolina down there at 65 cents, North Carolina at 55, and Florida at 40. So you can see there's a huge variation. The national average, the simple average is about $1.13 per line per month. The weighted average, it takes into effect population, it's about $1.05. So Georgia's a little higher than the national average, tied for 11th. There's certainly states higher and many states lower as well.
Scott, I want to jump in real quick.
Yes, sir.
Okay, $1.50 per line. So
Right.
as we talked about earlier, iWatch, iPad, cell phone, all has the same number connected. So it's just $1.50 for that actual phone number, not per device in the state.
Well, so the answer to that question depends on how that specific device connects to the network. So for instance, if you have Some people have Apple Watches that only work if they're within Bluetooth range of a cell phone. So if that's the case, that Apple Watch is not going to have a mobile telephone number assigned to it. It's going to go Bluetooth to this that does have the mobile telephone number assigned. So in that case, only this device is going to pay the 911 fee. However, if you have an Apple Watch that has its own distinct mobile telephone number and it has the ability to dial 911, that is going to be subject to the fee.
Thank you, Scott. And this really gets back to a point I've been making over all the meetings we're having. If we look at, I have a laptop in front of me right now. I have a Google line on here. I can dial out. It costs no money. I can dial 911. It's not going to pay a fee, right? I'm not arguing. I'm just saying this is just stated fact. The same is true on multiple other devices that you can connect. I can text using almost any device to 911 centers that allow texting to do it. So my concern is it's not equitable today. We're actually picking winners and losers by saying only the ones that have a phone number. Now, also knowing that phone numbers are a dying thing as well. In the future, we're not going to issue people phone numbers anymore. We're going to get a unique ID. It's going to be unified messaging, and it doesn't matter whether you're using that through video, voice, chat, Teams, Zoom, whatever. So how do we, and I don't know if you have a thought on this, how do we change both people's minds as to where it's going, but also level this out and make sure we're accurately capturing it from everybody?
It's a great question. And the difficulty is, who's billing you for that laptop? Nobody. So if you don't have a provider where you have a relationship, this is kind of like a use tax thing, back before Wayfair passed. I mean, are people going to voluntarily put on an income tax form, or how? So there's an administrative issue of how you're going to get the money when you don't have when you have a service. Like, for instance, I have a tablet that only works on Wi-Fi. I can, through that Wi-Fi connection, contact 911, but because I don't have a billing relationship, how administratively is that fee going to get collected? And that seems to be, I think, why it's tied to a mobile telephone number. And I think it's also tied to the ability to actually dial into 911. Because if you have a device, but it's not provisioned to reach 911, should they be paying into the fund?
Well, I think that is the question. I don't want to get too technical. I know you and I can probably go back and forth and understanding each other, but the reality is you're not dialing anymore like you used to anyway, because all the trunks are going away. Everything is IP based. And when everything's IP based in the future, IP to IP is not going to have anything to do with the phone number anyway. It almost becomes an immaterial part of the equation. So we have to start figuring out how we're going to do that. If you're at home on your home internet, whether you get fiber or cable, whatever, they know how many devices are connecting through typically, but there's going to have to be a way we rationalize this, because the phone number, again, it's dying, right? It's dying like all typical technologies go over time. And if we don't figure this out now, it'll be less and less and less and less. And then what happens is we disproportionately are going to have to charge more for the people that do have legacy technology. That's my concern.
It's a great point. And maybe it leads to the number 8 CTIA principle, which is over time, we should phase off of dependence on these fees and onto other general fund, state and local revenue sources. That might not be the answer that people want to hear. And clearly there is a benefit, a user fee type of benefit. But on the other hand, if what you're saying is true and everything's going to go away from an NPA NXX telephone number to some kind of a device identifier, it gets to be pretty much, I don't want to say impossible, but extremely difficult from an administrative standpoint to figure out how to get that money in the door.
I agree. I think that's what we're trying to figure out, and I appreciate your perspective, and I'm very familiar with CTIA. I think we have to continue this discussion to figure out what that looks like, and maybe that's at the charge of every broadband connection. Maybe that's another way to do that. And whether it's internet is internet is internet. Doesn't matter how you get it now. It could be coming from a satellite, could come through the cell network, it could come through fiber, cable. Doesn't really matter. Maybe that's a better way to look at it. Thank you,
Senator Robertson.
Hey, Scott. Unlike Chairman Albers, I am not familiar with CTIA. So who do you represent?
So CTIA broadly represents the wireless industry. So,
but you say broadly, you don't represent everybody in the wireless industry though, right?
CTIA does. I specifically work with AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. Those are my clients within the wireless industry that
Okay.
I work directly
You
with.
said something to start with, competition drives down prices.
Yes, sir.
That's good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Just want to make sure it
For the
didn't sound like that
consumers.
was a great thing. So I just, and don't want to trigger you, don't want to, get you emotional all, but 911 is extremely important, correct?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the
For our
lifeblood
consumers, it's
getting out
very
there. Yeah.
important. Yes.
So looking at the second slide in your pack, should not include real estate, cosmetic modeling facilities, or emergency vehicles, or salaries and benefits. And you and I are very close on that. I think if we could figure out a way to eliminate all those, then there's a possibility of looking at a way to lower that 911 fee. Now, capital costs, does that include, give me your idea what capital cost is. What's your definition?
I mean, and every state defines it differently. For me, it would be the buildings, the furniture, the computer equipment, the actual communications cost, all of the
Okay.
things that the North Carolina folks, I think North Carolina in a lot of ways has it right. The things that they talk about for their allowable costs are what I would consider to be kind of
What they've done is they've shifted their allowable costs over to a grant program where basically everybody comes in and applies for grants. And some of those grants are covering costs that aren't allowable under the fee side. Even though those grants are coming from the fees, it's so to me, it's just somewhat of just moving the money to the other side. But in technology, is there not evolution?
absolutely.
I mean, I'm sitting next to a man that understands it a whole lot more than I do, but I mean, I just recently learned how to watch a reel on Instagram, much less post one. So
You're ahead of me.
yes, yeah. Luckily, my wife understands that. But with the evolution of technology and it moving as fast as it does, how do we budget for that evolution if that money is not allowable to coming out of the fee?
Well, I think what basically in North Carolina, they don't pay for the telecommunicators. So basically,
Let's.
the counties pay for that with property taxes.
I'm not talking about salaries or benefits. I'm talking about the evolution of technology. I'm talking about what you would consider a capital expense. Where does that come from?
I think you do it through the fees, but what North Carolina did, my understanding is that they allowed it to build up over time and then spend it down. And they
Scott-
didn't use all the 911 money
Scott, you
on.
seem like a great guy. You want to eliminate the fees, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you want to use broad-based revenue sources. So wouldn't we have to go to broad-based revenue sources to address technology evolution if we did away with the fee, or if we eliminated from the fee the ability of capital expenditures?
I'm not proposing to eliminate from the fee capital expenditures. What the CTIA principles are calling for is eliminating the ongoing operational and personnel costs so that the money would be freed up for the capital costs.
Scott, and I may have just had a mini stroke. I'm not sure, but I thought you said that you wanted to take the capital you were talking about technology. You said servers, technology, things of that nature. You wanted those not be included in the fee.
I must have I'm
Okay.
sorry if I
Yeah.
I misstated. I think those are what should be
Okay.
included in the fee. And that's where the 911 fees historically did pay for that. What's happened is it's migrated to paying for more of the personnel and.
No, I would
operational
love to
costs.
put the personnel on the responsibility of the counties and the municipalities and let them compete for dispatchers. If one county wants to pay more, then the dispatcher has to go there and let them do the same thing that municipal law enforcement officers and firefighters and others have to do. So no,
I think we agree with each other.
Yeah.
I might have, I'm sorry if I led you to misunderstand my position. or
Yeah,
CTIA's
so
position
you're fine with a 911 fee, even though you'd love to see them go away completely.
Eventually.
While they exist, you're okay with capital expenditures being paid for out of those fees.
Yes, sir.
Your biggest hangup is you don't want salaries and benefits paid for out of those fees.
It is a CTIA principle. The decisions are made by each individual legislature. I'm not trying to tell the legislature what to do, but our principles would suggest that yes, the capital costs would be paid for with 911 and the operational and ongoing would be better funded from broad-based local, or if the state chooses to provide grants.
Bricks and mortar, salaries, benefits, all that come from the locals. And then the technology comes from the fees. Would
Yes,
that
sir.
be reasonable?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
One more question for you.
Scott, as I'm thinking through this more, maybe the ideal place to put the fee, again, is going to be on the internet line itself. As an example, if we were to, for somebody who's got a cable modem or fiber optic in their house, we know they're going to have multiple devices, depending on what size that line is, right? It could be 100 meg, could be a gig, somewhere in between. Perhaps that's a way that we could tailor that in order to make sure people are equitably be paying, and we're not again paying one versus the other. And again, it'd be no different from a cell phone than it is an IP line. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's something you need to look at. I do think you also need to look at the internet tax, whatever they call it now, the Permanent Internet Tax Freedom Act, which is the federal law that prohibits states from imposing taxes on internet access. There is a provision that says that legitimate 911 expenses are not covered by that moratorium.
Correct.
So I think it is something you could look at, provided that the fees are used for that specific intended purpose, so we're afoul of that federal law.
Okay, thank you.
And I do think, looking long-term, a lot of people are having those conversations. It's not CTIA's policy, but.
Fair enough. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let me catch back up here. Okay, so these are the top 10 states in terms of the total dollar amount of 911 fees collected. And I just wanted to give you a sense for the big states, kind of how much is being collected in 911 fees in these states. And I also put a per capita measure on there, so you'd be able to kind of see where Georgia fits among these top 10 states. And I'm in future slides, I'm going to basically limit it to the states in your region for some of these comparisons. But as you can see, Georgia is fourth overall in total 911 fee collections. In terms of per capita out of this group, you are number 3 behind Pennsylvania and Massachusetts. So point being, a lot of 911 fees are being collected in the state of Georgia, both on a per capita basis and as a total dollar amount.
Got another question for you.
Scott, are we comparing apples to apples? Are the 911 fees in all these other states used exactly as the 911 fees here in Georgia are used?
No, they're not, and I'm
Okay.
going to get to that in
Thank you.
my later slides.
Appreciate it.
So this is the 911 revenue per capita in the states in and around Georgia. You can see that you're very comparable to Tennessee, you're a little below Alabama, and you're significantly above Florida, North Carolina, and South Carolina. And to Senator Robertson's issue, I'm going to get to that, but it is because of what the allowable uses for the funds. There it is. Now, this is the estimated 911 cost per capita. Now, this data is from the FCC report, which I think everyone would agree is an imperfect source of data. It is self-reported by the states, and in particular in Georgia, I confirmed this with the folks in the back of the room. It's not a full sample. So the numbers here only include about 2/3 of the PSAPs. But Georgia estimate, and this is a self-reported number, that the total cost of the 911 system is about $577 million, based on, again, from the reports from 81 out of the 155 PSAPs. So this is significantly higher estimated cost per capita than is reported in Alabama, Florida, and North Carolina. Now, these are.
Scott, one more question. I'm going to let
Yes, sir.
Chairman jump in.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to go back one slide to where the top 10 states are. And I just think this is a very interesting data point for the committee members to look at. I just did a quick population search. New York is the 4th most populous state as an example. And if you go down to, Pennsylvania being number 5, Texas 2, Georgia's 8, Illinois 6, California number 1 in population. So this is, I think, where you're getting to in some of the other slides as well. This is a very interesting disparity of the population versus the fees collected. I realize there's a rate that applies to that, so you're going to do a multiplication to get that, but it does make you head scratch a little bit of it should be a little more population based and a little more consistent, I would think.
It's a great point. And, I've testified in several legislatures on these issues, and there is a sense of frustration among your colleagues in other states about trying to wrap their heads around why there's such these huge disparities. And some of it is explained by what you allow the money to be spent on. Some of it is explained by what some of the counties and PSAPs are reported as the costs. And like there's no guidelines that the FCC says, what does it cost to provide 911, but only include these things and don't include those. So it's been a frustrating and difficult experience for you and your colleagues in other states to try to wrap your heads and your hands around why there's this huge disparity in terms of the fees, in terms of the amount that's spent. I wish I had better data to give you that would allow you to say, wow, we really are an outlier here. But it's somewhat apples to oranges, and there's just no other sources of data available that I can give you that would allow better apples to apples comparisons. And that's why I'm trying to provide some of this different ways of looking at it, so at least you understand the nuances of what I'm trying to convey.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and just to be clear, South Carolina and Tennessee did not report to the FCC on this item, which is why it's not zero. It's just they didn't provide the data. So this is the number of PSAPs. Let me just catch up on my own notes here. This is the number of PSAPs reported from the states in your region. So I guess the message here is Georgia is not really an outlier. Like in some states, they've got so many PSAPs and they're so redundant. And boy, here's a great target for consolidation if we wanted to look at cost. But Georgia does not appear. It's not the number of PSAPs that's driving the high cost in looking at this data, in my opinion, because the number of PSAPs are sort of in line with other states in your region. So this kind of gets to Senator.
Hold you on that for 1 second.
Yeah.
So for a PSAP, are we talking about being broken down by each municipality on this list? Or could that be, I'm going to pick on Florida has about 200. Is that the fact there are 200 centers, but they could be broken down to 20 different counties or municipalities that have individual centers, more than one per county? Or is this saying this is actually 200 individual municipalities that has a PSAP?
This might be a question for some of the PSAP folks, but let me give you, my understanding is that most of them break down along county lines, but then you've got some large cities that, or even some larger suburban areas that want to have their own PSAP. So they've like, some of it has to do with just like not wanting to give up the PSAP, but most of it generally tends to follow along by county. But then there are additional ones in some of the large metropolitan centers in some states.
I just didn't know if like a county would have more than one, if they put their own set of redundancy in there. That was my question.
I think the primary in PSAP means that's where the call goes within that jurisdiction. So you could have a county with one for the county, but then if there's a city within that county, they have their own.
I understand that logic completely. I'm wondering,
Okay.
Is there a county that says I've got a primary and a backup, or I've got two going at one time for that reason? I'm trying to figure out the difference between what, if I can compare apples to apples, I need to make sure that we're looking at both the apples and not oranges.
And I apologize,
Go ahead.
I don't know the answer.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so this gets to the point you were making, Senator Robertson. The number of personnel funded. Did I do that?
That was for you.
So Georgia, and this is only with 122 out of 155 PSAPs reporting in Georgia. Georgia funds personnel from the 911 fees, and they have a lot of folks. Alabama, less so, Florida, less so, and then North Carolina and South Carolina don't allow personnel to be funded from the 911 fees. So they're at zero. And then Tennessee did not report. So my technologically limited brain couldn't figure out how to did not report. But I just want you to know Tennessee, I think, does allow personnel to be funded by fees, but they did not report. So I don't know what that number is. But this kind of gets to the whole point I was making earlier about, each state has a dramatically different statute that governs what can be funded. And some states just don't have any restrictions on what counties can spend the money on for their locally collected fees.
Scott, I appreciate this and looking at this and I'm going to ask you this. I'm assuming the slide stack was put together to get the position of your organization across to us on where you felt about certain things. But I think there's an innate problem with not comparing apples to apples sometime. And I appreciate the footnote at the bottom, the source reference. That means a lot. So we can go back and our staff can dig deep on some of this stuff and pull it out. But you do understand the caution we have when we're not looking at apples to apples, because look, I do not disagree with you that all of the salaries and benefits, it would be great if they were not put on the fee. But one thing I get, and I'm extremely biased on this note, is that the three most important numbers on anyone's phone or the two most important numbers are 9 and 1. Because of the fact that if your grandmother's having a heart attack in the middle of the living room in rural Georgia, that is the most paramount thing in your world at that time, and you want somebody to get there. If somebody's breaking into your house, if your house is on fire, it's extremely important. And the importance certainly is much greater than $1.50 a month. It is much greater than 55 cents. And when North Carolina, which did a great job on their presentation at the end where they said, this is an example of how it worked. Well, then you came up here and told us that the entire infrastructure was wiped away in the county that your daughter lived in. And you understand the importance of 911 in that case where one of your family members was involved. So when we look at these numbers, the thing that Chairman Bearden is doing right here is not a regular subcommittee looking at something that really doesn't matter to a certain segment of Georgians. This matters to 11 million people. So when we do look at this, we're not trying to bang you around or beat you up, but we do have to go apples to apples on this. So we make sure, because we don't want a system that is as good as North Carolina or as good as Florida. We want something much, much better, because we have to anticipate a Helene or something much greater than Helene 50 years from now. And with the evolution of technology, that has to be funded, and we have to figure that out. And it's easy to say, go back and look at other revenue streams. And I promise you, when we do that, this room is going to be filled up with twice as many people fighting for and against that revenue stream being the revenue stream we use. So we have to determine where we get it from. So your information, while extremely helpful today, we do need to drill down and get more granular on this stuff so that we are comparing apples to apples. But this has helped a lot, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
And thank you for that. And I've tried to be very careful to say that this is not apples to apples. And if you can find better data sources, that's great. But,
but we will look for other data sources here in Georgia to try to figure
yeah,
out.
and they may be able to help you with some of the comparisons from their neighboring states around you. But your point is well taken. States do it differently. And I'm not up here to tell you one state's doing it right and one state's doing it wrong. I'm trying to give you the numbers behind it so you have some ability to make decisions. But yeah, you need to drill a lot deeper than this.
I promise you, there's a guy sitting in the room from ACCG, and when we say the counties should be picking up the pay and the benefits 100% throughout the state of Georgia, even those rural counties that have a very low tax base, I promise you, every time we say it, he knows he's got members who are cringing and whose heads are about to pop off. But I appreciate your frankness. It's very much, it's refreshing. Thank you.
And
GMA's hiding back there too. That's a GMA's hiding back there too. I saw them.
And on that last point, Senator, I wasn't going to go there yet, but there are states that have looked at kind of bifurcating the funds and saying, all right, for instance, Idaho, their fee is $1.25, but they make and they basically take 25 cents of that $1.25. It used to all go to the counties. They took a quarter and said, we're going to put it in a fund, and then we're going to help the rural areas that they don't have as many lines. I mean, they got the same capital costs, right? And they've got and some of them maybe have even more distance to cover, but they don't have the base of 911 fees to cover. So they put a portion instead of just having all the money go to the counties based on how many lines they have in the county, they put a portion of that into a state pot, which then gets distributed through some other methodology that takes into account the fact that some of the, you've got some rural areas that aren't having the growth that some of the suburban areas have, and maybe people in the rural areas can't afford to have as many lines per household and such. So there are things that you can look at that other states are doing along those lines to try to, maybe if not fully centralize the 911 collections in terms of only distributing it some other, maybe a sort of a bifurcated distribution system that helps the rural, but also preserves the base for the existing counties.
And Scott, you bring up a good point now and you found others around that their reimbursement from the fee is based on calls received as opposed to lines in a particular geographic area, right? We've seen that in places.
I believe you're correct, and I don't know the numbers on that, but I know some do it on population, and some just have like a grant program where, the county goes and says, we can't afford, based on our 911 collections, to deploy this technology, and if there's a state centralized fund, they can provide a grant that they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford in some of those rural counties.
Thank you, Scott.
So I want to shift now to some of the wireless trends that maybe help explain some of what's been going on in terms of 911 fleet collection. And I just, if you look at the evolution of 911 fees, collections, and also what the money's allowed to spend on, I think some of the reasons might be based in historical data. So this is Georgia Wireless subscribers, and it's not 6,000. I messed up the thing on the side. Those are in thousands. So it's 2 million, 4 million, 6 million. So between 2001 and 2008, there was a 4 million increase in the number of wireless subscribers. So in 7 years, you added 4 million. And then it took another 14 years for that number to go from 8 million to 12 million. So what was happening, the decade of kind of 2001 to 2010-ish, you had this massive explosion in the number of wireless devices and a significant growth in all this 911 money. And they had so much money coming in, it's like, well, we're either going to have to lower the fee or we're going to let them use it on different things. And I think some of what you're seeing is states had so much money without having to raise fees coming in that they broaden the allowable uses of the expenses. But then if you look at kind of the next decade, there's a significant slowing. And in the decade of from 2010 to 2020, that's when the wireline cord cutting really started. I mean, most of that first decade of the 2000s, you had the wireless growth, but people were still keeping the landlines. And then in the next 10 years, they started to go back on the landlines and the wireless growth slowed. So what happened was you had a slowing of the automatic, if you will, growth in 911 fees, which then led states to that combined with having to upgrade to phase 2 and then starting NG 911 put more pressures on the funds. And that's when you saw states looking at doing increases. But I just think it's interesting to look at, the reality is going forward, wireless is not going to see the type of growth that it had in the past. And so basically, you're not going to be able to count on sort of this automatic strong growth in revenues that you've had in the past. The question I understand also came up about prepaid collections, and I just wanted to show you what's been going on with prepaid wireless. So this is the percent of overall wireless subscribers that are prepaid. And you could see that 2013 was sort of the heyday, if you will. You had this strong growth in prepaid, but then after 2013, you sort of saw it phasing down. So it's shrunk from around 23% of all wireless connections to about 14%. And I think the reason for that is that prepaid and postpaid are starting to look more and more alike. I mean, the postpaid plan prices have come down. The prepaid offerings are more robust, including data. And so in the consumer's eye, for the lower income consumer, the benefits of going to prepaid are not as great as they were now that a lot of the postpaid offerings, and as the cable companies have started offering their own wireless plans with the bundles with the cable, where they're using the other companies' networks, the price and the price competitiveness for postpaid, you're just seeing prepaid decline as a share. So to the extent you're seeing prepaid collections either not growing as much as they used to or shrinking, I think this kind of explains why you're seeing some of that.
How's the 911 fee collected on the prepaid if I pay by $25 card?
Good question. So with postpaid, it's on your bill. With prepaid, when you go to the store and buy your card or just go to a kiosk and top it up, it's like at the point of sale. So if you recharge once a month, you pay one a month. If you buy it twice a month, you pay 2 fees. If you buy it every 2 months, you pay 1 fee every other month. It's done at the point of sale, similar to a sales tax.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'll wrap it up. This has been an interesting conversation. I think the questions have been sort of focused on the key issues. And I wish, as I said, I wish there was better data I could give you apples to apples that would help you make these decisions, but it's just not there. So I guess I would say that Georgia's 911 collections are high, both in absolute dollars and per capita compared to other states. And the costs are high because, as has been pointed out, they pay for personnel and other operating costs. And then Georgia has one of the more decentralized systems. You leave basically everything up to the locals, and it's my understanding that there are no grants or otherwise assistance to rural counties without the fiscal capacity, kind of what I mentioned earlier. When you look at the national data, there's still roughly 10 states that are reporting that they're not spending anything on NG 911. Georgia did not report, so I'm not going to say Georgia didn't, but they didn't report. So most states are moving to spending more money on NG 911, but it's still, for some states, it's a relatively small portion. Kansas, Maryland, North Carolina are the ones that have sort of reported to the FCC that they're sort of complete. And again, one thing I would urge you to look at or consider, and then I promise I won't talk anymore, is, Pennsylvania is sort of a cautionary tale, because back in 2016, the PSAP community went to the legislature and said, we need to start implementing NG 911. We need a fee increase. So they raised the fee to $1.65 from $1. 7 years later, in 2023, they came back and said, we need a fee increase to implement NG 911. And it was kind of like, well, what, the last 7 years you had a 65% increase. There wasn't a lot of clarity around why more of that money hadn't been spent for 911. So the legislature raised the fee again from $1.65 to $1.95. And then this year, there's legislation pending. They want to raise it from $1.95 to $2.25 to pay for NG 911. And so I guess what I would say is, if that's your goal and you are considering a fee increase, there really needs to be some kind of accountability or measurability to make sure that money gets spent for that purpose, so that you don't end up like Pennsylvania, where every few years they're asking for an increase to pay for the NG 911. And with that, I
think you
will
just sparked
stop.
your question.
Yeah, Scott, that's a terrible example, and I'm gonna tell you why. I don't start out a joke without completing the punchline. What reasoning did they give for the 2 additional increases? I mean, as a responsible legislator, I can look around this table and tell you that if we gave them one to do that and they came back a few years later and said, hey, we need this to do that, we're going to say, well, we gave y'all one back there to do it. What is the reasoning for this one? Did they underestimate the cost of NG 911, or was the money wasted on something? Were there not the legislative guardrails put on it in order to make sure the money was used for what it was used for? Why is Pennsylvania failing in that area?
I don't know the answer, and I would never say that they wasted the money, because I don't know.
But you used them as you said, here's a cautionary tale, an example of what, and so.
I would say that the legislature did not put the guardrails in to make sure that, for instance, if they'd said, okay, we'll raise it 30 cents, but 100% of that money has to be spent on 911, maybe there would be a different result.
Okay, and that is your assumption.
That is my opinion. It's
Your
not-
opinion. Okay, good. Your opinion is what I'm asking.
That's
Well,
not based in fact, because I don't have the facts on the ground to be
Oh.
able to tell you what. It might be a good question for your folks to ask their folks. Maybe there is a good explanation. Maybe there were cost overruns, or maybe the technology changed. I don't know those answers, but I do know from an industry's perspective, it was frustrating to, because we don't want to go in there and oppose 911 increases, but we do, for the reasons I mentioned at the beginning, want to make sure that the money's spent efficiently and wisely, and the fees are as low as they can possibly be on our consumers. It's a source of frustration that the NG 911 upgrades are not getting done despite these repeated increases.
my folks need to find out what happened in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Maybe there's a good story to tell and I just didn't tell it.
I agree with the second half.
I'm taking.
Right. Scott, I appreciate it. Testimony went really well today, and hey, I scheduled 4 hours. We got less than 2, so you like me instead of doing 2 hours and going 4. So we do have 2 public speaking or requests here. The first one is a Jessica Saxton with Justice Without Limits. Does this have to do with NextGen 911? Okay.
My name is Jessica Saxon. I'm actually born and raised in North Carolina, and I had a lot of family that was, impacted by Hurricane Helene. And so, your 911 services, your dispatches, when people call that service, it's not just for emergencies like Hurricane Helene. There's other things that happen whenever that people do call 911. The Constitution of the United States is the overarching requirement that every state must follow. If this system is used to abridge the constitutional obligations, then we must notify the agents of the state that this particular service is in fact being used to abridge those constitution. So for example, Clause 1 of Amendment 5, it says that no person should be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime. So if you have, someone that goes out and uses your 911 services to dispatch your police officers that will go out and arrest someone and then hold that person over for a capital or otherwise infamous crime without presentment or indictment of a grand jury, then unfortunately, all the actors there just abridged the Constitution and they violated that. An emolument violation I must bring to your attention is when you pay public officials, you pay law enforcement officers to break the law. We find this in Article 1, Section 10. That's where it states that no state shall create any law that shall impair the obligation of a contract. So all of these people that you're going to be paying through this services are under a contract. Police officers, prosecutors, the judges that will be called to hold these people for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, they're under a contract. And that contract is their oath that they swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. The other area of an emolument violation and these funds going to pay these individuals is the 14th Amendment, and that's where it states that no state shall create or enforce any law that shall abridge the privileges or immunities of United States citizens. So again, even though this was presented on Helene and it was presented on, the catastrophic event, the 443 calls in Buncombe County and in Nashville County that the lady presented earlier versus the 5,000 calls that were presented the next day, those are not the same. The 400 and some calls per day, that's what you're going to be receiving. And I would dare say that those are not calls that are being received because of a heart attack. Some of those calls were received to go out and arrest someone unlawfully and then hold them for a capital or otherwise infamous crime. And then that's where you fall into the emolument violation and the abridging the privileges that are secured and protected by the Constitution. So I would just like to say, last thing is privileges and immunities of United States citizens are already minimum, those that are enumerated within the Bill of Rights and the first 10 amendments. That was confirmed Timms versus Indiana in 2019. So if you do pass this, if you do allow this to happen and you fund this, then I have to encourage you that we also must start encouraging these law enforcement officers to act according to the law. And they can't use these services to violate the rights of people in America. So Mr. Tanamo Downing is preparing to litigate the same issue at the United States Supreme Court. I do have a notice that I would like to leave here for you and put on the record if you don't mind. Thank you so much.
You got a question?
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good.
Okay, you brought something up and you were very vague, but I want to kind of drill down a little bit. So in your scenario, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that individuals in 911 centers would dispatch a law enforcement officer to make an illegal arrest?
Yes, sir. That
Okay.
happens every day.
And okay,
Yes, sir.
so where does your research find that the information does the dispatcher aware that they're dispatching an officer to make an illegal arrest?
Not necessarily the dispatcher would.
Okay.
But
Where would the dispatcher receive their information?
from the caller.
Okay, so a citizen, let's say in most cases, would be the one to call 911,
Right.
convey unsolicited information in most parts, where they would call in
Mhm.
and say, hey, I'm being assaulted. And we'll just use that as an example. And then the dispatcher would dispatch whatever unit possibly available, law enforcement unit possibly available, who is certified within whatever state and jurisdiction that the call is received. And then that individual would respond to the area where the
Right.
call comes from. And then they would, based on their training, evaluate the circumstances of the situation. If you had a citizen making a complaint,
Mhm.
or if that person dispatched there witnessed a violation of in most cases, a state law,
Right.
possibly a federal law, but in most cases, a state law. And then they would act based on the oath that they took.
They're supposed to. Yes, sir.
No,
But-
and look, we're talking about, I will not sit here and tell you there's no bad actor in everything.
I
What
appreciate
I'm
that.
trying to connect here is, of course, we're not passing anything right now. What we're doing is we're studying
Sure.
911 fees and other things of that nature. So I'm just trying to figure out the detriment that you attach to us looking at 911 fees and assessing 911 fees, if that's what
Let me
we.
put it to you like this, instead of it being just a citizen. So I advocate on behalf of about 10,000 families across the United States, and the majority of them are dealing with family court and juvenile court and CPS. What we're
What was
finding,
the Child Protective Services?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
what we're finding is that CPS will call law enforcement through the dispatch
okay.
to send law enforcement out to, assist them in procuring children unlawfully.
So are you saying CPS, they're using 911 to
They're using dispatch services. Yes, sir.
So Child Protective Services calling 911 and saying, I need an officer to come out to where I'm at, possibly?
In many cases, I have seen, yes, sir.
Okay.
I have evidence of that.
Okay, no, I'm not saying that. So if you'll continue, CPS calls 911, officers are dispatched,
Right.
and then what happens when the officers get there?
Unfortunately, the officers, a lot of times, because CPS is deemed to be a state agent, right? So you have all the state agents. So
But they
CPS,
have zero arrest powers.
they don't have arrest powers.
Correct.
They come in to enforce CPS to remove children unlawfully from parents. And that's what's happening all over this country.
No, I know. I see what you're saying. I'm just trying to connect the thread back to Next Generation 911,
All-
and I think you've helped me out.
All I'm saying, sir, is that I would encourage you to look into how this system is going to be used. And if at any point it's going to be used to abridge the constitutional protections of your citizens in the state of Georgia, which I have many affidavits that can prove that it already is happening this way. Okay,
Love to read those.
absolutely.
Thank you
sir.
very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your testimony. We're not passing anything today. We don't have a bill in front of us. What we're trying to do is make sure we have a funding mechanism to make sure the citizens of this state is safe. And if they call 911, they have the ability to make sure that personnel gets to them no matter what the situation is. Townwide Downing with We Shall Be Free Tour. Yes. Yeah. Does this have to do with funding of NextGen 911? Does it? Okay.
It does. So again, just as Ms. Saxon was just saying, that if this system is going to be used to facilitate the abridgment of a constitutional obligation, it's important that we bring this to your attention so that we can work together to fix it. She brought up the indictment issue or the absence thereof when the state of Georgia allows for the prosecuting attorneys and law enforcement who are going to be dispatched by this system to go out and arrest someone without an indictment by a grand jury in violation of Clause 1 of Amendment 5, then again, this system is being used to facilitate such abridgment of constitutional obligation. You know, the state of Georgia here, you can't enact your own alternative legislation and then substitute that for the guarantees of the Constitution and go out and enforce that as though that's constitutional. You see, these two issues absolutely are related. The systems that this committee here is budget for is being used in that facilitation of the abridgment of constitutional obligations. We're trying to bring this to your attention, you know, because this is extremely important. I don't think that any one of you want to see the violation of the Constitution of the United States of America, certainly not under any inferior state statute that leads to the destruction of the Union. Now, you mentioned a moment ago, Senator Robertson, you mentioned the state law. Well, that's true, but the state cannot exceed the limitations of power codified in the Constitution of the United States. So when the Constitution provides the limitation of power or the limitation of power in the exercise of the duties of the state, then of course, when they do create a law and direct their agents, the law enforcement, to abridge their obligations in that law, that is unconstitutional, right? And the Supreme Court has said so, and even the Constitution of the United States says so. So this system is absolutely going to be used to facilitate the abridgment of constitutional obligations, and that is the point that we're trying to make. That is the notice that we provided. I would welcome you guys to read through that notice and reach out to me. But this is a necessary step in order to move to the next level in litigation that we have and provide notice to you, the Senate, the state of Georgia. And I thank you guys so much for your time.
Appreciate your time as well. That will wrap up the committee meeting. I appreciate everyone being here today. End of the day is, oh, time out.
2 minutes.
Come on up.
We take a vote on that?
Yeah.
We take a vote on that?
Senator Robertson just wants to vote on this. So,
We take a committee vote on letting Stu testify again?
I prefer not because I think I know I have one nay.
come. Okay, you want to use the podium? Go ahead.
If that's, yeah, I
Yep.
could be woke. So a couple of things that were provided in testimony earlier today that I wanted to make sure we went back and corrected the numbers on. So while JICA is not legislatively tasked with auditing our 911 centers, we do have a great working relationship with the Department of Administrative Audits. So we approached them and asked if they would provide the most current E911 certification expense form that our jurisdiction submitted as part of their county or municipal audit. So I took all of those forms and using a little bit of AI combined all 18 line items for 168 forms. And I can tell you, we did have 10 jurisdictions that did not complete the certification forms. But on the most current fiscal year, we can document spending over $341 million in 911 fees. And specifically for salaries and benefits, we spent $245 million. So our salary percentage that there has been interest in is approximately 71.7% of our total 911 expenditures. The other thing that was put on the record that I wanted to correct was that Georgia did not report spending any funding on Next Generation 911 last fiscal year. Through 911 fees that are remitted through JICA, we actually did expend over $348 million, and those activities funded some of our GIS efforts. So I just wanted to go ahead and give those numbers and say that I can share all of the data that we've drilled down in, and we can actually even reach further back. The last thing that I wanted to put on the record was that there's been considerable conversations that states have amended eligible expenditures because they were running a surplus of fees. And it was alluded earlier that salaries and benefits became an eligible expenditure as a result of surplus fees. But if you look back at the legislative history in Georgia, we actually defined our eligible expenditures from the Emergency Telephone Service Fund in 1990, and we had 5 expenditures, with one of those being the actual cost of salaries for employees hired. So those were just a couple of things that were kind of alluded to or said during the meeting that I wanted to correct on the record. And I will yield and their questions.
48,000, not million.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. 348,000, not 348 million. In fact, we did not build a system behind your back and we are hiding that from you. 348,000 was spent. Thank you, AB. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. And that.
Well, now this will wrap up the meeting. But anyway, I do want to say thank y'all for everyone that came out this meeting. We'll keep you up to date on a potential next meeting. To all our first responders, I know Halloween night can always be fun, but everyone be careful and just be careful at your jobs. And we appreciate everything that you do every day for the citizens of this state. So thank y'all very much, and meeting is adjourned.